Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. The smallest of the small business people struggling to make a living in New York are street vendors. They work long and hard hours. But to succeed, instead of tax breaks, they need a small piece of the city's sidewalks, and that is not easy for them to get. The Street Vendors Project of the Urban Justice Center helps these hard-working entrepreneurs better protect their economic and civil rights. Sean Basinski is an attorney and the project's executive director. Cheikh, a vendor, is a member of the board of street vendors, and they're my guests today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Ronnie.
Yeah, I love your project, and I have to admit I love street vendors, so we're already partial. You were a street vendor for a summer, and you have been a street vendor for 7 years?
Yes, 7 years.
7 years. And I think that you provide the city with not only a visual display, but certainly revenue, but most important, you are providing people with jobs, vendors.
Well, that's
very
right.
Important, right?
It's very important. You've got about 10,000 street vendors working every day in New York City. And so, of course, it's them. But like with any business, you have then secondary workers. You have the people in the vending garages that take care of the garages. You have the people that make the bagels that are sold at the bagel carts. And so the effects on the economy of New York City are huge.
So why haven't they been considered small business?
I think it's really a political question that vendors have never really been very effectively organized. They've always been poor people. They've almost always been immigrants, as they are now, and they've always been opposed by much more powerful interests in New York City. And so this is the history of vending in New York City, and I think that's the main reason why it's so difficult to be a vendor.
But they contribute a lot of money. I mean, we have revenue. And if they were, well, it's also tied in and interrelated, isn't it? Because it's the number of licensed vendors, the number of unlicensed vendors, the difficulty people have getting vendors, and the cap on the number of licenses all makes it very difficult. If the city recognized it as small business and recognized the economic contribution, wouldn't they be more willing to raise the number of vendor licenses that are issued?
I think that's right, and that's what we're trying to do. So many people say to me, Ronnie, they say, "Oh yeah, vendors. Yeah, you work with vendors. That's great." And then they say, "Well, what do you do with them?" And people have a hard time imagining what kinds of problems vendors have or why we have an organization. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to get people to make that connection. That person that they buy things from every day, in fact, has problems, and those problems are a function of the politics of New York City. And so if we can get more people involved and educate about the problems that vendors face, we hope to be able to make a change.
So it's both ways. You have to tell people what the problems vendors face, but you also have to get to vendors and say, together we have much more power than we do independently.
That's right.
Right.
And
So, Cheikh, you're a vendor.
Yes, I am.
All right. Are you a licensed vendor?
Yes, I am a licensed vendor.
So how long did it take for you to get a license?
Okay, that was quite easy because I'm a veteran.
Oh.
So I was involved with the armed forces of the United States. So after I finished my services, I came back to New York, and getting a job was very difficult. And I think vending will be a good start for me to keep on providing for my family.
But you did work before you decided to be a vendor.
Yes,
and
I
you
worked.
make more money being a vendor than you did when you were...
Not exactly. If you look at it, when I was working, since I've been in this country because I'm an immigrant, since 1990, I worked restaurant jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I work also for the city and state of New York in the court system as an interpreter. And also I was in the armed force. So is it easier to vend and then working in the restaurant or being in the military? I would say not. Vending is quite more difficult. But then again, maybe with vending, you can organize your life such a way that you can grow because that's a business.
It's
and
a
that
small
was
business,
that's
and
a
you
small
want to have
yes,
bigger
and that was the
business.
reason why I said, okay, let me stick to it, and probably
Go from there.
something better will come up one day.
That's so great. So, I mean, that just is a small business. You're going to
That is
expand your
correct.
business. Someday you're going to have a department store.
That is correct.
Right.
That's the goal.
How many permits are there now?
Between food vendors and merchandise vendors, you've got about 5,000 licenses or permits, depending on
So the food, there are more licenses for food vendors.
Oh, that's right.
Right. And the merchandise vendors, are, what, I read about 600 or something?
Yeah, you've got 800, and then you've got veterans like Cheikh. U.S. military veterans are allowed a special licensing preference according to New York state law, which is why about half of the merchandise vendors you see out there are U.S. military veterans.
So, and it's like a newsstand then?
Sort of like a newsstand, that they're given a preference, right?
Right. And then if you can't get a license, what happens? There are waiting lists for licenses.
Very long waiting lists. In fact, they can be 10 or 20 years that people wait. So some people then, if they need to support themselves, choose to vend without a license, and that brings up a whole range of new problems because people that sell without licenses are subject to arrest and confiscation of their property. And so every day people are cycled through the criminal justice system for the crime of vending without a license, which is really not a crime, we don't think. It's just a lack of opportunity. If they could get a license, they certainly would, and it's only because they can't that they're breaking the law.
So how many of them would be, well, I mean, if you're a vendor without a license, are you considered unemployed?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I don't know how I don't know how you're
It seems to me in this time of record unemployment, the difficulty we have finding jobs for people, and especially people who are coming to this country for the first time, that vending is such an obvious choice, and it shouldn't be so difficult for them. They should be able to do it. So what are some of the obstacles? Why, aside from the number of vending licenses that are legal, what else happens? I mean, how do you change the number of licenses? That's a good way of asking.
Last year, there was a bill before the City Council that would vastly increase the number of licenses and permits available. It was sponsored by Council Member Barron, and frankly, it didn't get a lot of support. And the reason is that the big businesses that are opposed to street vendors are very, very powerful, as you know, in our city. And we haven't been able to come up with enough of a grassroots movement to counteract that.
And it went to the Consumer Affairs Committee?
It was at the Consumer Affairs Committee.
So yeah. Maybe since the big businesses aren't willing to provide jobs instead of allowing a vendor, maybe you should, I'm already part of you, maybe you should attack it from the economic development point of view, small business, economic development, revenue to the city, jobs for people, and all the positive things.
Yeah, there are so many people that would love to be vendors. The city could create 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 new jobs at the drop of a hat by simply giving people more licenses. It's a big city and there's lots of room for people to sell. And that's one of the issues is that the businesses say, oh, there's already too many vendors out there. They're crowding our sidewalks. They're providing unfair competition. It's not unfair, but they think it is. And in some cases, that it could be true that the sidewalks are crowded, but it's a very big city. There's plenty of room for another 5 or 10 or 15,000 more people on our streets. Remember, vendors are only allowed to take up 8 feet by 3 feet of sidewalk space. It's not very much.
So now, all the regulations come out of the Consumer Affairs Department or the Health Department?
Right.
There are two. So how does a vendor learn what the regulations are?
Well, it's not easy. In fact, when they go to Consumer Affairs Department and get their license, they're given a thick book, which is actually a photocopy of the City Administrative Code, which is difficult for someone who is an English. I can't
understand it, so it's very hard for somebody else.
And most of our vendors are immigrants. 85% of vendors in New York City are immigrants, and many of them struggle with the English language. And so we've been trying to get the city for a long time now to publish some sort of a publication in different languages. We now have one that we give out to our members, but not all vendors are members of our organization.
That's a very hard job, I guess, to find these vendors. So the health regulations are about the product for the food vendors.
Right. The health code applies to food vendors, and so the same rules that apply in restaurants about temperature of the food, bare hand contact, those same rules apply to vendors on the street. And then there's a lot of additional rules in terms of where you can place your push cart. For example, you have to be 20 feet away from any building entrance. You have to be 10 feet away from the crosswalk, and that kind of thing.
So you're a vendor.
Yes, I am.
What's the most onerous? What's the worst part of vending?
The worst part of vending will be having to deal with police officers on the street. After you understand all the rules and regulation, and also going to spend a day at ECB. That's the worst day.
That's when you get a violation.
You get getting a violation, and then
And
having
then you
to
have to go to the Environmental Control
Yes.
Board, where they invariably fine you. Do you ever get away without being fined?
I mean, sometimes yes, but most of the time I would say no. Because, I mean, it will be easy for somebody to get fined after you understand the rules and regulations and also understand why you're there. Because when the police officer is writing you a summons that you don't understand why he's writing you that summons, and you have to go to ECB prior to last year, we did not have access to interpreters and stuff like that, so it was kind of difficult.
You don't even know why you're getting a summons?
You know, because if you don't read exactly the handwriting of the police officer,
They don't tell you why you're getting a summons?
most of the time, no. They just tell you pack and you leave.
So why are you getting a summons?
Okay, for not displaying your license, being too close to the crosswalk, or sometimes they don't even understand the rules themselves, and they give you ticket for being by the fire hydrant, and you're not a truck, you're not driving to
You're on the
sell,
sidewalk.
you're on the sidewalk, but they still giving you a fire hydrant summons,
Yeah.
so, and ask you to pack and leave, or move your car. So those, I think, make it very difficult for somebody who doesn't speak very well English, then trying to go and understand the book, is it applied to me or not,
Yeah.
and being confused, whoever told you that you're supposed to be there, but the police officer is giving you a ticket and you're not supposed to be there. So there's that conflict. Then you go to court and they say fire hydrant, and you say, the judge will ask, were you by the fire hydrant? And you say yes, and they find you guilty, but not knowing that you're not driving a truck, you just stand by on a sidewalk.
How do you decide where you want to put your cart?
Okay, after you met all the requirements with the rules and regulations, you say, okay, I can fit on the street because the sidewalk is wide enough and there is space. So I think I should be able to put my business here because there's some foot traffic.
And you want to be smart. You want to site it in a place that you're going to get the business.
That is correct.
So, but there are areas in the city that you're not allowed to have vending. Do you call them
right.
carts?
Carts or tables, depending on
Tables.
what you're selling, right? Merchandise, of course, they sell from tables. That's right. So once you get a license, if you're so lucky to get one, it's very hard to find a place to vend. And one of the reasons, as you say, is because many streets have been declared off limits. Usually by the same legislative process, by the big businesses going to the city and saying, we've got too many vendors here. And so, over 100 years or so, this is, more and more streets have been declared off limits. Which means that vendors then have to crowd together in the few blocks or the relatively few blocks that are still available to them. It's a problem in both ways.
It must make you very unhappy to see bike lanes where they take part of the street to allow people to ride bikes, and they won't give part of a sidewalk to somebody to make a living.
It's interesting. I mean, it is about the transportation advocates have been pretty effective in getting across their argument for public space, because it is all about public space. How much space do we give to the cars? How much space do we give to bicycles and other folks like that? How much space do we give to the pedestrians? And how much is left for people to carry on their businesses? And so we need to do a better job of getting more space for our people.
Are you allowed to put carts or tables in the new park area, the mall down at Times Square?
That's something that we're currently looking into, and we think the city is going to do their very best to keep vendors out of that area.
So it all comes down to power.
It's all about the fight for public space, which in New York City is very difficult to get, and if you're not pretty well connected with the government and the forces that be, the powers that be, you're probably not going to get space.
On 125th Street, there's a what do they call it? A shopping mart with one vendor after another.
Correct.
Are they vendors like you?
No, they small business owners.
I know they're small business owners,
but I
do
cannot
they
call
have
them-
to be licensed like you?
No. So I'll consider those person like somebody who's going to be in any mall in New Jersey or upstate New York
Right.
and paying their rent.
Would
That's
you
it.
like to have more malls like that? Or do they charge too much rent?
That's one thing, and also I like the mobility, be able to work when I want to work, and also pick the neighborhood I would like to work.
So now there was a recent fuss about a new regulation the health department had that you can't leave your cart. Was it just for food vendors?
Just applies to food vendors.
That you
right.
can't leave your cart unattended.
Right. So the health department came out with a new rule, which makes a certain amount of sense if you're not thinking about it. They're concerned about the integrity of the food, the safety of the food. What they didn't think about is that vendors have to leave their carts during the day to go to the bathroom. And so this happened for the first, and the worst part is if you do leave your cart, not only is it a violation, but they scratch off the permit off your, they actually take out a razor blade, scratch off the permit right there, and then it takes more than a month for you to get that permit back so you can get back to work. And so this happened to one of our members about 3 weeks ago, and we're trying to get the health department to change this regulation. Obviously, everybody needs to go to the bathroom, but I think it's an example of the city just not thinking about the problems that vendors face. If they had talked to vendors, if they had thought about it, what it's like to be a vendor, God knows if any of them had been a vendor themselves, they would have known that the bathroom access is actually an issue. It's very unhealthy not to go to the bathroom, and so this is a real health issue for vendors. We hope the health department changes this rule.
Vendors have such a long history in this city, doesn't it? I mean, in all immigrant groups. I mean, you see the pictures of with people down in Orchard Street and down Lower East Side with all the carts lining the street and vending and selling, and it's something that's a part of the city.
That's right, and people like Cheikh are now the modern day version of what maybe my grandparents or great grandparents or many. Right. So many people come up to me and say, "Oh, my grandfather was a pushcart peddler."
Yeah, a peddler. We called them peddlers.
And yet they don't realize that those folks are still out there struggling in the same way that their grandparents or great grandparents did. And so you're right that vendors have such a strong and proud history in New York City that we need to draw upon that. Again, I think it's about getting people to open their eyes.
Cheikh, you're a merchandise vendor.
That is correct, Ronnie.
So, and being a small owner, that means you're a buyer of merchandise to then sell,
That's
right?
correct.
So where do you look for your merchandise?
Usually I buy it around easy access in the city, in the garment district and others. And now, after spending a few years, like I said, 7 years, I have a clientele established and I see their way of life, and also I'm predicting their way of buying. So I sometimes go out of New York to just purchase merchandise. I talk to my friends and family overseas. So if I see things that I like, I can send them picture over the internet and they can resource it for me there and ship it to me.
So what's the difference between you and a small shop owner? It's just that you don't have a shop, you have a portable shop.
That is correct. That's the only difference. And also, I don't look at them as a competitor. I'm not competing to them.
Right.
They're, for me, they're role model. I said they succeeded. I would like to be able one day to be their neighbor.
Right.
That's just what it is, nothing else.
And do you think you're typical of vendors, of street vendors?
I mean, some people have a stereotype about vendors, thinking that vendor is somebody that was born and all he had in his mind was to sell on the street.
Yeah.
That wasn't my case. And I will not say that I was not fortunate enough, because when I was in the military, I was an air traffic controller. But because of my age, FAA say if you're more than 30 years old, you cannot talk to
How old
pilot.
are you? You look like you're 18.
No, I'm in my 40s. So not being able to be on a tower in air traffic as an air traffic controller, I have to readjust. And those are the things also that they teach us in the military. So I readjust. I say, okay, this is what I will be able to do, so I can spend some time with my family, re-educate my children, and also grow from this level where I'm at, and looking forward also to be part of corporate America maybe in the next 15, 20 years.
And you pay income tax?
Of course,
and you collect sales tax?
Every year.
And how much does your license cost?
As a veteran, it costs me $10 every year to renew. And then the $10 is a given. But then again, every year before I renew my license, I have to pay all the fine that the NYPD has given me.
And how much do you think that a year do you have of fines?
Last year it was around $1,200.
So what we need really is an understanding of what a street vendor is, right?
Right.
That they are entrepreneurs, that they are paying tax, collecting revenue for the city, paying taxes. I mean, why is that so difficult?
Yeah, I think it's A lot of people, when I say I work for street vendors, the first image they have in their mind, for some reason, is of the counterfeit
Yes.
handbag vendor
Right.
on Canal Street. There's maybe it goes back, to the '70s when there was more of it was a seedier time, and you had the 3-card Monte, and the streets were a scary place. But nowadays it's not like that. And in fact, the vast, vast majority of vendors, of course, are not selling counterfeit goods.
The handbag guys, what are they selling?
I used to sell also handbag, and those are not counterfeit handbag. Those are regular handbag without no name tags into it. And what I see, like I was saying earlier,
Well, they're knockoffs. They're not counterfeit.
Generally,
I mean, a bag it's perfectly legal to sell a knockoff design.
Right.
Correct.
In fact, the stores do it themselves.
Yes,
Exactly, all the time. Everybody does
And
that.
following also the trend, we know that everything you see on those big shops are on the street without no name tag on it. So it's easier for whoever said there's a competition somewhere, because I say those store owners that say we are competing them, they come a year after me being in that corner, a year later, they sign a lease in front of me, and 6 months later on, they start copying everything I'm selling. When they open up, they were saying souvenir shop, they're selling T-shirts and others. And now I see them, they're carrying the same hat I'm selling, they're carrying the same sunglasses I'm carrying. So it's not for me to look up to them and say, okay, I would like to become like them. They want to become like me, picking up all the items I'm selling and put them inside their store.
There's a debate, I guess, in New York of people who love the mix of New York and the street excitement and the noise and the color and everything else, and people who think it should be more orderly with standardized street furniture and clean sidewalks and everything. Is that what it comes down to?
I think that's right. I mean, a lot of people have talked about the suburbanization of New York, and it's sure some people would like a quieter, more orderly, more corporate New York City. Sure, I think that's the case. Most city planners, though, if you ask them about street vendors, they say that the vendors are very important. First of all, they provide eyes on the street, and so there's actually a safety function. If vendors are there, if somebody gets in trouble, or if there's some crime, a pickpocket, the vendors are going to be there watching it. And in fact, they can help the police, as they often do. And there's also a function of just that vendors make our neighborhoods more of neighborhoods. And so the first person that I speak to, I live by myself, every morning, is the coffee woman that I go to, right? And so that's an interaction which brightens my day and makes my day more valuable. And because she's a part of my neighborhood, and I see her every morning, and she knows. So it's really about what kind of communities do we want. And some people think that we certainly believe that vendors are good for New York and they're good for our communities.
And a couple of years ago, I was in India at the conference, urbanization and street vendors. So when we put up a new city, let's put it somewhere else in the desert of Nevada. You put a big city, you put the highways, you put the big malls and everything. And I will feel a little scared to drive down seeing nobody on the street. If I have to leave my house, drive and go underground parking, park my car, go up in the mall and buy what I have to buy.
Never see anybody, huh?
Yes, and then never see anybody. That will be quite a funny city.
That's
but
why
what
we
makes
live in
New
a
York?
city.
That's why New York is New York. And people that come to New York, and I'll say mostly the tourists that come to New York, they're looking for the street vendors.
So the problem now with the number of licenses that you feel, well, the city would certainly earn more money if they licensed more vendors. And the city council basically regulates all of these things.
Basically.
And then once the responsibility is delegated to an agency, that agency then makes regulations that you have to follow.
Right.
So you want more vendors, right? More vendors' licenses.
Right. More licenses and permits in the case of food vendors.
And a more welcoming attitude.
Sure. And that carries forth in many different ways, right? So, for example, now we're trying to work with the police department to be able to do a training with their new recruits every year at the police academy. so that they understand vendors, and so that
Very
they
good.
are more respectful, so that they talk nicer to vendors. So many times when we talk to our vendors, it's just about respect. It's how they feel treated. And if you or I were vending, it would probably be a very different reaction, a very different encounter than when our vendors, they're pretty easy targets. And if the police need to give a ticket, if they have a quota to fill, they can probably find a vendor, and they can probably find a rule to cite them for. And we need...
That's a very good idea to
yeah.
do the training there.
Yeah.
And then the health department needs what? More...
Better communication, first
yeah,
of all.
better, more. So you start with the whole thing about a license and what is the role of it, what are the responsibilities of a vendor, and that the city really has to put that out so people understand it, right?
Right.
Then you need more, you want more vending licenses.
Right.
Then you want more understanding of the different agencies and better communication.
Exactly.
And we're going to run out of time. So you, on your website, which
Right.
is
streetvendor.org.
there is a movie, a little film that shows a vendor really being harassed. I mean, it's the police and vendor interaction, but I think if you watch it, you will see that vendor is being harassed.
Right. We've got a few videos that actually show what happens
Yeah.
to vendors, because it's hard for us to believe if we're not out there every day what happens. The way they're treated by the enforcement agents is often just very disrespectful.
Well, I think that we should leave this program with a message that these are small businesses, and we pay a lot of attention to small business owners, and that you guys really want the city to pay more attention to the vendors as small business owners.
That's
and
right.
assist them.
The city and the general public as well. We have a Facebook page for those of your watchers who are on Facebook. We'd love it if you would become fans of ours on Facebook and follow what we do every day. We're out there in the streets every day. We have vendors coming into our offices every day. We're holding events and doing different things. And become aware of this movement and talk to your local vendor. Talk to him or her about their problems. And maybe that will lead to you becoming more involved with what we're trying to do.
Well, I thank you very much. You also have the Vendy Awards, which we've neglected to talk about, which is this great festival of the food vendors and all their food and which one comes out the best. And we hope people will go to it because you raise money, don't you, that way?
Every September, that's
Yeah.
a big, it's actually our biggest fundraiser right now. So yeah, please come to the Vendy
Well,
Awards.
thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ron.